Welcome to Women in the Arena podcast, the podcast celebrating women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. I'm your host, Audra Egan, and our mission is to elevate the value, strength, and resilience each woman brings to the world. Without further delay, let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome in, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me again this week. This week, my guest is Stef Ziev, and she is an amazing powerhouse. Let me tell you a little bit about her. First of all, she was an executive in the entertainment industry. She worked for such organizations like the Oxygen Network for about 2 decades. So she's worked with really amazing, dynamic organizations and people. She is a TV executive turned certified executive coach, keynote speaker, and author of the best-selling book, The Choice is Yours, A Simple Approach to Live and Lead with More Joy, Ease, and Purpose. She has also been featured on NBC's Today Show on a reoccurring segment, Coach Me If You Can, ABC's Good Morning America, and On with Mario Lopez on iHeartRadio. She's here to talk to us about choice and the power of choice and what it can bring us. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce to you, Stef. Thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I love a good intro. Sometimes I trip myself up, which is so wonderful that we have the power of editing. So you guys don't always get to hear me screw up, but trust me, the intro is the hardest. And I did forget to say in the intro, make sure you listen all the way through because you do want to hear about Stef's story. And she has a special gift for all of you. So make sure you listen all the way to the end so you can hear more about her and what she has in store for you. So don't forget that. So Stef, thank you again for being here. And what do you have in store for us today?
So I think we're going to talk about that power of choice that you mentioned, because that is certainly my jam. I wrote a whole book about it. I bug my clients with it all day long. They're like, I have to. I'm like, you get to. They're like, I need to. I go, you want to. I should. You can. So it's like even the language that we use to tell ourselves stories will either energize us or deplete us. And it can really actually start with just words. It's, because our thoughts are happening unconsciously and also consciously, but it's in our unconscious thoughts that when we voice things, that it becomes very clear what energy we are leading with, which is impacting the results we create. So there's a lot of unconscious stuff going on. I think even there is an unconscious story that we often have, which is I don't have a choice. And in this day and age, in many cases, that might be true. And one of the things I talk about in my book is the author and psychologist Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And he was in 4 different concentration camps during the Holocaust. And one of the things that he really focuses on in this book is talking about the opportunity that we have in every given moment to choose. So even though he was in a concentration camp, that man still was choosing hope. He was choosing to live. He was choosing to keep his eye on the prize, which was to finish a manuscript, to reunite with his wife. And those beliefs and that choice kept him alive. And unfortunately, some of those results did not happen in the way that he wanted. And it still got him through, like the worst case scenario.
So words matter is what you're telling me. And you're also speaking from experience because you didn't get here. You weren't born this way. You had a journey to get here. So I want to know a little bit about that journey. I did allude to in the beginning that you were a television executive for a really long time and you rubbed shoulders and elbows with some of the biggest names in the industry. And I mean, you were a bigwig. I mean, what did you do and how did you find yourself from there to here?
I mean, I always wanted to be in the entertainment industry. I always wanted to be a talk show host. I really wanted to be Phil Donahue, which I know I'm dating myself, but I loved that man. You know, for those who don't know who he is, he was kind of the OG of talk show hosts, and he used to run up and down at the aisles and talk to the audience and get their questions for his guests, and it was just it was like my everyday must see TV. So and that was when I was about 15. So, as life was, went on, I did study communications in college, and then I ended up going to Los Angeles, and I did get into the entertainment industry, started as a production assistant. I have lots of fun stories for that too. And then eventually, and I really did love it. I loved it. And then I moved to New York, and that's when I actually started working for Oxygen. So I didn't work for Oxygen for 20 years, but I was in the entertainment industry for over 15 years and in all different parts of it. So when I was at Oxygen, I had also, well, let me step back one second. When I was in LA, I actually did a master's program in psychology, and I really loved it. And then when I moved to New York and started my career as a vice president of development at Oxygen, which meant I was on the creative side. I was developing stories and scripts and creating movies and series. And again, I loved my job. I loved my team. What ended up happening was my boss left, and I loved her. And then instead of putting my hat in the ring, I made a very conscious choice with my counterpart, who was the VP on the West Coast, that we were not going to put our hat in the ring as the SVP, which I would not recommend to people going forward. That is a bad move in life. Always put your hat in the ring. I chose not to because I looked beyond and I thought, I don't want that job. It took me away from people. It took me more into budgets and less into creative, and I didn't want it. So in the process, I had a new boss, and it kind of it was like a perfect storm. I really didn't like my boss. I liked him. I didn't like working with him, and I didn't like my boyfriend at the time. And I had a moment where I was like, you know what? Like, none of this is working for me. And what I really miss and what I really love is personal and professional development workshops. And that's what I really want to do with my life. And I had someone say to me, well, why don't you be a life coach? And I said, I don't know what that is. It was 2006 when I first started that journey. So that was really a long time ago, in terms of when kind of coaching came on the scene. There were certainly real pioneers from way back when, including the people that I learned from, but it was not a thing at that time. So I had this moment where I broke up with the boyfriend. I still had my job, but I was quietly getting certified as a coach on the side while I was still a VP and having a full-time job and, this big thing. So there came a point where basically NBC, there was a fire sale that needed to happen with Oxygen. NBC came in to buy them, and there was going to be kind of a drop. There was like December 3rd was the day when everyone was going to know what was happening. And so I was certified on November 12th of 2007. And I had a moment where my COO called me in to her office and she was like, I want you to know the CEO and I are going to do everything to save you. We want to keep you here, and I found this moment where I want to say it was a conscious choice, but I had this moment where I think that it was a real moment of what am I going to do in this moment? And I felt as if this energy was like pushing me forward, and I found myself going, Lisa, no. And I was like, did I just say that out loud? Did that actually come out of my mouth? And then I admitted, she's like, what do you mean? I go, then I said, I just got certified as a coach. I think I want to give it a go. I'll take the severance and leave. Thank you very much. And on November 28th, I was officially let go with my severance. And then the rest is a very wonky history.
So you had this energy of, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to see what happens and figure out if this is what I'm meant to do. And through that pull, that energy, did you find out, is that what you were supposed to do? I mean, I know that it's a long, wonky history, and that's not where you ended up, but it was part of the path that led you to where you are today.
No, it actually is where I ended up. It was just that I didn't have a map to get there, And
Gotcha.
so when I say wonky history, I mean, I have succeeded and failed 1,000 times, and they have been both, extraordinary failures, some extraordinary successes, and that is what led me here. So, and when I say here, I am thankfully in a place of success, and I'm grateful, and I love every second of what I do, and I'm still thankfully in touch with all the people that I worked with in the entertainment industry who I also adore and love. So but it really was a moment where I was like, I did look ahead, and I was like, I do not want that job. I cannot, my soul will not thrive in that scenario if I keep going on this trajectory. And I knew that what lit me up was personal and professional development and growth and, mindfulness and choice, So, yeah. But along the way, when I say the wonkadoo, I mean, and you'll probably ask me a specific question, so I won't get ahead of myself. But.
I will. Did you know at that point, and I don't want to get ahead of myself and I don't want to spoil the story, but did you know at that moment that you were laying the groundwork for this idea of the power of choice, of your choice? Did you know that? Was that a conscious thought, or was that just a feeling that you're like, I can't do this. My soul is dying, and if I do this one more day, I'm just going to shrivel up and die.
Yeah, I think that was more the thought. It was just like, this is not like again, I had both, I think a lot of us, I don't know that it's ever very black and white for people. I think that there are aspects of one's job that we probably like, or we could find that we like. I really loved managing people, right? But that's a good indicator of what I now do in some way. Not that I manage them, but I was really always being a coach. If I look back, I was a camp counselor. My first job was I was a regional director of like a regional youth group. Like, I have always been a coach in my core. And so now there was just an honest, there was an industry for it and a career about it. And so I took it. So I don't know. I was not, it was not like I am a conscious choice creator at this point. That was not how I operated. In fact, my original brand when I first started was my last name in Hebrew. My last name Ziev in Hebrew means to radiate light. It literally means the flame, like the rate, like to radiate light, like around a candle, like around a flame. And so my first branding was get your shine on. So that was retired many years ago, but that was the original thing. The original thing was like, because I think, it was an indicator of like that I didn't have my shine on. I was not lit up by what I was doing. And that was a really big indicator of what helped me and probably physically pushed me to say, Lisa, no, that changed the trajectory of my life.
Well, I know that you said that you had lots of bumps and bruises along the way, which just sounds like life to me. I mean,
Yeah.
we all have bumps and bruises along the way, and I know that not all of it went fantastic. But you did share a story with me that you were struggling, and you had won a ticket to an event, and I want you to talk about this event and how this is where you finally had this epiphany that I think led you to writing this book and led you to this clarity and this movement, and where this power of, oh, I can choose. I absolutely can choose my circumstances, or I shouldn't say I can choose my circumstances. I can choose my movements in these circumstances, because we can't always choose where we're at, but we can certainly choose how we behave where we're at. So I want you to share that story, because first of all, it's hilarious. And second of all, it's eye-opening. And it's just wildly entertaining.
So yes. So, and I would say you can, how you relate to the issue is the issue. How you can always choose how you relate to the issue, and you can always choose your response, right? That was the Viktor Frankl thing, he had said between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space, we have the power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So that's that's like the whole essence of what I want to, expand further and share widely. So yes. So what happened was after I left my job, I immediately went into what I would probably call like a cave, which was just my apartment. And I kind of was like a lost puppy. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what to do. And I kind of hunkered down and just tried my best to make everything pretty, right? I had my brand and my website, and I was just building all my systems and not really doing the work. So anyway, a few years into this experience of not really getting what I needed, and also having made, sitting on the couch often with my best friends, Ben and Jerry, and gaining lots of weight with their presence. There was one night where it was really this is about 3 years in, and my money was running out. New York is an expensive city. I really had no prospects. I really had no clients, and I really it was bad. So I had a little bit of a wake up call where I was getting ready to leave my apartment and sublet it and move back home with my parents at age 40. And kind of the week before I did that, I was flipping through, in desperate times, what do? We flip through the channels back in the day when there were channels that you flip through. And I landed on QVC, which is not something I've ever done before, but Tony Robbins was speaking. The weak self in me was giving, turn to Tony to give me all the answers. And I ordered with, basically no money. I ordered whatever he was selling. And so in the mail came all of this stuff plus a ticket to go to Unleash the Power Within. So I did move home. I lived with my parents for 2 months. I turned 41 on their sofa. It was not a good time. With my tail between my legs, I did move back to the city. I did get a job back in the entertainment industry because I knew that was the fastest way to make cash and just to build myself back up a little bit. And I had clients on the side, but it was both and. But I still it was not a good time. And I really had lost a lot of my mojo. So I had this ticket and I decided to go. And I went by myself, which I wouldn't recommend to anyone. And I went by myself in a sea of 5,000 people. And one of the things that I knew was going to be there was something called a firewalk. And it literally is that. You are walking on fire. And I knew in my head at the time, I didn't really want to do it, but I kept saying out loud, this is part of it. And I'm so afraid of everything right now. And if I don't walk on the fire, I'm never going to get what I need. And I was telling myself this whole story. So the day, and honestly, my experience also was when I went to the event on the first day before the event actually starts, there's a lot of people milling around who have already done this at past events. And they are like disciples. They are they talk about it like it is, the holy grail of transformation. Cut to after a 14-hour day on the first day, we go and I find myself walking with 5,000 people to this open air parking lot with all of these burning beds of, 2000 degree Fahrenheit rocks that are on these, I don't know how many there are, but there's a lot. And we're all walking and chanting, yes, yes, yes. And I can't help but feel a little nervous as a Jewish woman. I did not like this. So, but the whole thing also was Tony kept saying, no one's going to let you cross the rocks unless you are in state, right? So I was like, okay, I'm not in state. Then I'm not going to have to go. Someone else is going to stop me from this crazy choice, right? And so I end up getting up to the burning rock. I'm really freaking out. I mean, like, there's a woman behind me, doing her yes, yes, yes. And I turn to her and I'm like, I can't, what is, she's like, just dance. I'm like, but dance, what? And I'm like, I started, like, I don't know what I'm doing. So anyway, I get up to the bed. And again, I am turning to the woman who was standing there, who was not going to let me walk. Right? Because I'm just trusting that Tony's not going to let me walk and she's not going to let me walk and no one's going to let me walk because I'm not in state. And anyway, ends up, and I'm like, I'm yelling over the din of 5,000 people. I am not in state. And this woman is like a Stepford housewife. And she's like, go. And then I found myself like running across, not running, but like walking quickly across the burning bed. And at the end of it, everyone is jumping up and down. And I'm like, my feet are burning. And I really thought I had burned my feet to the bone. And I like, gingerly walked myself over to a little, to a staircase that had some light. And I was like terrified to look at my feet. And I did. And I saw that they were smooth and nothing happened. But the light, the burn was, the fire was burning within me. Let's just say I was so angry at myself at that moment that I had let myself do this, right? That I gave my power to Tony. I gave my power to the woman. I gave my power to all the people walking with me. I gave my power to all these yes chanting people, and no one stopped me, including myself, from walking across this fire. And it brought up so much stuff in me about like, what if I really did burn myself, right? Like, it made me think about, as I had mentioned to you years ago, there was another motivational speaker person who did a sweat lodge in Arizona, and there were people who died because they didn't remove themselves when they didn't feel good, because this guy was saying, just breathe through it, or you're stronger than the whatever. And the truth is, this was not constructed properly, and they died. And in my head, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, what could have happened with this moment that I did not take care of myself? And it terrified me, to be honest. And so I was not happy for the rest of the time. And but yet I stayed at this event. And it wasn't until the last day of the event where I was sitting next to this perfect stranger woman, and she was a very sweet Midwestern woman. And I said, what time is this over? Like, please, dear God, let it be over now. She's like, oh, it doesn't end till 7 tonight. This is like 7 a.m. She goes, wasn't that firewalk fantastic? And I was like, at that moment, I realized, like, oh my goodness, I am not shackled to this chair. No one is keeping me here. There is a door I can walk through. And I did. And I walked through the door and I left. And it was like, I felt like I felt my freedom for the first time in a way that I never did. And it just struck me, like, I put myself in that position. And there's a whole other part to this, which I'll share in a second. But I will let you know that this is the introduction to my book, and I titled this "Fuck You Firewalk." But, but to that point, let me just say, I also do have a saying with my clients, and I have posted about it, called "Fuck You, Thank You," right? Which is, for every fuck you, there is a thank you on the other side. So it is, and everyone who loves the firewalk would be like, but you definitely got something out of it, even if it was like a fuck you. I'm like, yes, I did. And, and I take responsibility for my choice, unconscious as it was, wrapped up in all my perfection and all my perfect child and all my stuff as it was. And it was my choice, but the theme so far is, I gave my power away. I made a choice that wasn't in service to really my best. I thought this thing was going to do something that would, impact me in the moment in a way that was not the way it impacted me in the moment. Right. And so there's lessons to be learned.
You said a lot of things. First of all, in state, I have questions.
Yes.
What in the world does in state mean?
That's a great
I don't know what this means. For the record, and when you and I spoke before, you asked me about Tony Robbins, and I said, I don't really know. I said, I can't figure out if he's a genius or a charlatan. So that's why I've never done anything about it, because I can't decide, because there's a very fine line.
Yeah. So there is.
I can't decide. So I don't know what the end state is. I'm very uncomfortable with the whole chanting thing. That makes me very, very uncomfortable. So what does what does end state supposed to mean? Do you like
So
levitate, or what is this thing?
I'm sure there were people levitating. I was not one of them. In state literally means, look, here's the thing. The concepts are fine. Like they're fine, right? Like in state just means I'm going to get myself in a state of mind that is going to allow me to take a risk. It's going to allow me to align with all the parts in me that are going to put me in a state of fierceness that I can do anything. I mean, we can sit here right now. If we stood up right now and walked in a circle and sat back down, we would change our state, right? So it's a very simple, common thing that coaches do, that we do. We know we can change we can always change our state of mind. Like I can ask your audience right now, like, what do you do to change your state of mind? You might go for a run, you might call a friend, you might see a movie, you might, like, think about it. There's all these normal ways that we change our state, right? And so when he was talking about it, it was like there were people like karate chopping the air and getting into warrior pose and like really kind of, and also another way to change state is, whenever we succeed in something, there's kind of like the universal, Rocky, when you're on the top of them. I'm dating myself with my references, but all champions we all put our hands in the air when we win, right? It's like a thing. And there is something about like chin up, hands in the air. It changes your state and it gets you into a state of action and a state of believability and a state of strength and confidence. And so whatever that is for you, he was asking us to create a move that would get us into our state. And his was like like a superhuman or Superman or superhero type thing. I don't know. I'm a very bad actor, and I'm not really a fan of I was not that kid that went to a movement class. I was like, can I just use my words? Like, this is, I don't, and my words are, I am not in state. Like that was my state. I am not in state.
I will agree with you that even though that was a horrible experience for you, it did change you. It something flipped on inside you and went, oh my God, I don't ever want to do that again. And something completely turned on when oh my God, I've been giving myself away for my entire life. And I will concur with that. There's something happened to me around 49 or 50 where I realized, oh my God, I've been giving pieces of myself away for my entire life because of all the different labels I wear. First, I was a daughter, and then I was a student, and then I was a wife, and then I was a mother, and then I was an employee. Every single label I wear, I give a piece of myself away. And I always wore the label and then thought that the choice went with the label. And it wasn't until, like I said, something happened when 49 or 50, the light bulb suddenly turns on and I'm like, holy shit. I don't have to do this.
I would add woman to that too as a label, right? Because I would
that too.
As people are listening, what as a woman have we done? Have you done, have I done to give our power away to, whether it's men, a boss, society, it could be another woman, like a guru, where have we made choices to diminish ourselves and our knowing versus trusting our gut, right? And I think that is what happened for me in that moment. I was like, oh my Lordy, this was giving my power away at a dangerous level, and that was my wake up call for sure. And then I got to put it to practice later.
Well, tell us about the practice. Tell us about this, the choice is yours. I mean, because this is powerful. And for those that have never heard that the power is in their hands. And I know that sounds radical. That sounds like, when you mean that you've never heard that the choice is yours? Some people have never heard that they hold all the power. because it's never been taught to us, because you alluded to that by saying being a woman. How many times because most of my audience is women, that we were taught you need to be a good girl. Mm-hmm. Good girls don't do this. Nice girls don't do this. Or if you're a woman in business, heaven forbid, women in business, if you want to survive, don't do this. Don't make yourself look too aggressive. Don't be this. Don't be that. I mean, and there's all these different rules that are, first of all, are always contradictory to each other, always. And you're like, well, what am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? And so you feel like all the choices are made for you in a lot of situations. So you forget that you have options, that you have choices. So when you put it down, pen on paper, and you're absolutely declaring that you absolutely have choice, that is a radical statement.
Yeah, I mean, the choice is yours is actually, it's like we say it all the time, right? But I don't think we ever think about it.
Correct.
So that was what I wanted to shine light on too. It's like the choice is yours. Oh, wait, the choice is really mine. Like I get to actually have a stake in the game here. I get to have agency. I get to go against the grain if that's better for me and right for me. And I get to really sit and make the conscious choice, because the other part of it is like, we're making choices all the time. I made a choice to walk across that fire. Was it a conscious part of me? No. The way I think about it is like, I say, who's sitting at the head of your table? That's how I think about it. We all have these different parts of us sitting around the table at any given moment, right? We have happy, sad, we have confidence, doubt, we have worthy, unworthy, we have, and then we all have individual part. I said I have the perfect child, or perfection sits at my table. Who sits at your table, Audra? Anyone else?
Lord.
Any other part of you?
Well, I am the oldest, and I am the oldest daughter. So that comes with all kinds of stuff. So it's perfectionist. It is the caretaker. Mm-hmm. It's the you always come last, never ask for help. The list goes on and on.
Right. The lone wolf. That's a good one. Right.
Exactly.
Other people might have the pleaser or the martyr is a big one, and on and on. Everybody will, I'm sure that everyone's thinking right now, like keep thinking about who's sitting at the table. And the question in any given moment is, what part of you is sitting at the head of the table? Because that part is the authority who's really in charge in that moment. And what that part is doing, the word inside of authority is author. So that part of you is then authoring a story that you are then enacting, you are experiencing. It is leading the way. So I was telling myself a story, like I have to, in air quotes, do this firewalk in order to get to my next level in life, right? That was the story I was telling myself. The author of that story was perfection, was diminished, right? It was like, Tony says you have to do this in order to get to the next level of life. And I did. And in my brain, the other part of that story was there's no other choice except this one, right? So and what I think is so fascinating is that I, with all the things that I brought into that story, made that choice to walk across and didn't think I had a choice to do otherwise. And there's a book called Quiet by Susan Cain. She also did a TED Talk about it. And she talks about the power of introverts. And I am not an introvert. I am an extrovert. But she talks about going to a Tony Robbins event as to observe the ultra extrovert, right? Mm-hmm. And in doing so, didn't even occur to her to walk across the fire. She just observed everybody doing it. It was an immediate, not even a consideration for her. She was like, not for me, and I was like, what? That was radical for me. I was like, oh, introvert. Anyway, so, but what ended up happening was a few months later, after I walked on the fire, is I maybe not a few months, it was probably a year or two later, I ended up doing this leadership program. And in the leadership program, I was a participant. And in the leadership program, there were about 40 or 50 of us, maybe 50. There were about 50 of us. And part of the curriculum was a ropes course. And if for those of you who've never heard of that, or you don't know what it is, it's basically a series of exercises or events that are high. There's low ropes course and high ropes courses, and you are doing all these trust exercises with yourself and others. And it's both to build team and it's to build confidence, and it's all the same stuff that anyone might get from doing teamwork or team building. So, but some of these included like really high events, where one is called a pamper pole, where you climb up. You're hooked up to harnesses, but you're still out in the woods, and you're climbing up like an old a telephone pole. At the top is a very wobbly metal plate, if you will. You have to somehow hoist yourself on top of that without holding on to anything. And then from there, you jump off onto a trapeze, and then you go, and then you're let down by your peers. Well, I was like, I'm not doing this. So before the course even, really on the first day of the course, we were asked to agree to all the things, all the curriculum that we were going to do. And we had to raise our hands. And so I didn't raise my hand when asked about the ropes course. And I said, and the woman came over to me, she's like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm not doing that. And she said, well, how do you know? I go, no, I can tell you I'm not doing it. She goes, well, why don't you just wait till you get there? I go, no, I'm not doing it. And so I didn't have the words beyond I'm not doing it, which were enough, but I didn't have the exact, like, I didn't know how this was going to actually play out, because I really wanted to be in this course. I really wanted to do the leadership program, but I was like a no for the thing. So somehow she let me stay, and the day came for the ropes course. It was a gross day in the morning. We had to wake up at like 5:00 in the morning, which was already not for me. And we went, and so the way the guy who was like in charge of safety and all the things, he said, here's how it's going to work. Everyone's going to stand up in front of each station, and you're going to say, my name is, and I choose to do this event. And suddenly I was like, I know what I'm doing. And so we went on the day, and everyone was looking at me because they knew where I started with this whole, and I was like, this is not gonna happen. So I went up, everyone went up, my name is, I choose to do this event. I get up and I go, my name is Stef, and I choose not to do this event. And then I did a happy dance, and everyone looked at me with like a combination of envy and resentment. But I did not do any event. I did one event. Actually, I did one thing, which was a crazy thing when I look back, where I did like a fall back into the whole crowd from a platform. I did it like the trust fall back, and they caught me, so it was okay. But I chose to do that. That was a conscious choice. I made a choice to do that. And so it felt different, right? And I also made a conscious choice to not do all the other things. So I always say to my clients, it's like, whether you do it or don't do it, choose it, right? You can just as easily choose. I can choose to not go to the gym, as opposed to just resenting and resisting the fact that I should go to the gym, or I can choose to go to the gym, so it's like that changes your state too. So Absolutely. That was my big lesson. And that was kind of, and then, and that changed the game for me. And I started to really speak in terms of, I choose to, I get to, I want to, or I choose not to.
What has this been as far as the impact with the people you work with? I mean, you, as I spoke to in the intro, that you are an expert that they are relying on for NBC, ABC. What has been the impact with your clients when you change the narrative to I have to I want to, when you have a choice, or I don't want to? What's changing in their life?
Well, can I ask you, I mean, just in this moment, what's the difference for you when you say I should or I have to versus I get to and I want to?
Oh, there's a change in my posture. There's a change in my chemistry. There's a change in how I feel with I get to means I look forward to it. When I have to, I feel like I'm shrinking inside. Like I'm sitting here as we're recording right now. I'm sitting in my gym clothes because I get to go to the gym. I already planned my whole day, and I know when I get to go to the gym because I chose the time and I get to go because that's the choice I've made. Now, when I'm like, oh, I have to go to the gym, everything seems to go haywire, including when I get to the gym, it's a disaster. So that's what happens.
So it sounds like, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
And the hardest part of going to the gym is getting there. It's not actually being there. It's getting there. So if I change, and that's with everything that's hard. So if for me, if I change the way I'm talking to myself about it, I take the hard out of the process of getting there.
Yeah. And I mean, that's an awesome answer. And that is very typical for my clients. I mean, I work with the C-suite and senior leaders and established entrepreneurs and high-level creatives in the entertainment industry. I mean, those are my people, right? And for each one of those, shifting their language, their attitude, their state of mind, if you will, and the stories that they're telling themselves and who's sitting at the head of the table, to lead with choice, to understand their value, to understand their options, to understand their power, has expanded the possibilities for them in their business, in their creative outlets, in their opportunities. And it is also, in many cases, it's expanded their impact and increased their bottom line. So it's like, I think that because, it's like joy begets joy, right? Choice begets choice. And upset begets upset. It's like we the energy we put out, we attract. So if we're leading with have to and dread and upset or worry or fear or stress or anxiety, that is what we are in. That's what we're pouring into our action, which is creating our results. I always say this to my clients. If it's like, I don't care what room you're in, it could be a Zoom room, it could be a conference room, it could be a dining room. But if we are unconscious about the energy that's sitting around that table, then all of that unconscious energy is what we are mixing into the results that we're creating. So business and teams and and bottom lines and output have transformed by even just the simple act of, I have my clients do this all the time, that before they get on a call, whether it's just before they get on a call or when they get to a meeting, they affirm in their way who's sitting at the head of the table. They might say it to themselves. If it's a team that they're running, they'll say they have brought this into the Zoom room or the boardroom or the conference room, and they say, let's go around who's sitting at the head of everyone's table right now. And then, because they want to really be mindful about what's getting infused into this meeting. And it does change the game when there's an acknowledgement of like, I'm committed to bringing joy. I'm committed to bringing clarity. I'm committed to bringing, generosity. I'm committed to bringing curiosity into this meeting or into this conversation. And it does impact everything else. It's extraordinary.
What I think is really interesting through all of that, which is not only the power of changing your thought process, changing your mind, changing your words, changing your attitude, but at the beginning of that, you explained who your clients are. And these are people that we would consider to be high-powered or, high executives or people that we would look up to and we would think are other, are excluded from us, are distant from us. But you're telling me they are the same. And that's kind of the point. That's kind of all of the point, is that they are the same. It doesn't matter what their title is, what their job is, what their bank account is, nothing. None of that matters. The only thing that is different between them and us, the little people, is maybe how they change their minds.
Yeah, I wouldn't even affirm that there's an us and them.
Yeah,
I don't think it's
it
little people,
does.
big people. It's just people. People are people, and whether you're a leader of an organization or a Fortune 500 company, or you're a leader of a household, like, it doesn't really matter. Even I'm not a parent, so I can't speak to this, but I do think that I offer this as an opportunity to, how you relate to the issue is the issue. How you choose to be with the way in which you're talking to your children is a choice, right? And I understand in the moment it might not be an easy one, and it might be something that, instinct takes over, or rage, or something, or exhaustion, or whatever it is. But I think that to bring choice back into the conversation and have it be an option for people, I think can change a lot of things. It's like, I think the gym one, and even the choice to eat something, like, these are silly examples, but I think that they're like an everyday universal example. It's like, if you choose to eat the cake, then it's an enjoyable experience. If you are going to beat yourself up while you're eating the cake, what's it going to do? It's going to stick to you longer, right? There's not any flow. There's just anger and upset and judgment, and it's yucky, right? So it's just like, where else are we doing that in our lives, and what can we choose to do differently?
Well, I'll share with you a funny choice that I made when my kids were teenagers. I mean, I, they were they're my kids, so they were difficult. I'm not gonna. They were not angels. They were they still are strong-willed children and have no problem in voicing that. And my favorite way of choice and changing the narrative and trying to change the way the situation was going, especially when there was an argument between the two, and then I'm trying to step in and try and wrangle them. When it was getting out of hand, I would say, "All right, that's it," and I would grab the keys and I would leave. And then they'd say, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I am not going to make a good choice in this conversation. I am
Mhm,
not. So I am going to leave," because they were teenagers. They
mhm.
could handle a mommy timeout for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I go, "I'm going to leave. I'm going to go take a ride. And then when we get back, we can talk through this, because if I continue to stay here, this is not going to end well for any of us."
That's amazing awareness.
So I'm leaving. So normally I would leave. I would go to Sonic and get myself a slushie and then come back. By the time I got back, they were calm
Mm.
and we could talk calmly about it. But I had the awareness. I didn't realize that I was making a choice. I just knew that if I continued to stay, I knew myself enough that I'm like, if I stay, this is going to get ugly.
Mm.
So, and I don't want to make it ugly because it
Yeah.
doesn't need to be.
Right.
So
That's amazing.
it wasn't until I got older that I realized that I was making choices.
Mm.
And I now just try to be more aware and make more of them. I try to be more aware and more conscious of the reality and the here and now, and make more of them on purpose rather than on accident.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it is a practice of awareness for sure. I think we are, you think about how many choices we're making per day unconsciously. Even, I mean, I live in New York City, so I don't have a car, but I do drive on occasion. But even driving is, you're making a million unconscious choices in any given moment, right? But we're not consciously thinking about it. So it is really a practice, and I would encourage people to, just really be mindful about who's sitting at the head of your table before you start a meeting. And if it's like anxiety or fear or exhaustion or whatever, acknowledge it. But then if you can choose it, to put a different part there so that you can lead with, love or joy or excitement or whatever it is that you'd want to put there, see what the difference is at the end, and see what the result is and the outcome. And then those are going to be the incremental changes that are going to have, exponential results.
Because you don't want to do a firework walk you don't want to do.
No,
You
no,
do not want
never,
to do a firewalk
never
that you don't want to
again.
do.
Never
or
again.
a ropes course or anything.
I'll
Or
tell you, I got to tell you a quick funny story. I recently was, someone reached out to me about co-authoring a book. And by co-authoring a book, they mean you pay them to co-author the book. And the sell for the co-authoring of the book is that I would be on the front cover with Tony Robbins, who endorses
I'm sure that went
the
over
book.
well.
I said to the guy, I go, so let me tell you something about the opening of my book.
I may not be the right choice.
I said, I may not be the right choice for that book, but thank you so much.
The power of choice.
Exactly.
The choice of yours.
I choose not to be on the cover of that book. Thank you so much.
Now, of those of you that think Tony Robbins is awesome, that's great. That's fantastic.
There's
wonderful.
many elements that are awesome about Tony Robbins. His work is great, you know?
But the power is yours.
Yes, that's it.
The power is yours, not his.
Totally. And there's something extraordinary. Look, I want to be clear. I own my experience, right? I chose to give my power away. I chose to walk across that fire. So I take responsibility. And I think that that's part of this, right? We get to choose to take personal responsibility, which really is just our ability to respond to our circumstances or to a circumstance. And then we go from there. But it is I don't make Tony Robbins bad or wrong. I mean, he is who he is, and he's doing what he's doing, and amen, and God bless, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I probably will choose to not go to another Tony Robbins event.
Yeah. Because the reality is that you've got all the power you need.
And I got what I needed. Right. So
you got everything you need.
Yeah. Thanks, Tony. Yeah.
This has been awesome. This has been so much fun. This is, like I said, it's been enlightening, wildly entertaining. And also, I hope that everybody got something out of it and is being thoughtful about, I wonder about what kind of choices that I've been making unconsciously that maybe I need to start being thoughtful about and going, maybe I need to make a better choice. And I did promise at the beginning that you have something special to offer people. So what do you have in mind to offer people that are a little bit special for everyone?
I have two things. One is you can buy my book, which I highly recommend you do. You can buy it anywhere where books are sold. But what I would recommend is if you go to my website, which is stefziev.com, and I think we'll probably put the link somewhere accessible so you know how to spell my name. If you go to, although I can say it too, my name is Stef like Frank, and then last name Z like zebra, IE like Edward V Victor.com. And if you go to my website, you'll see a book page, and in there you can press a button that says order now and get your free gift. So if you can order from anywhere, right? But if you come back to that page, that order page, and you put in your receipt number, you will immediately get free gifts. One of which is you'll get chapter 2 right away, and which is called Your Story Sucks, Change It. And you'll also get a recording, a 30-minute recording of a basically like a Q&A I did early on when the book first came out. And hopefully that'll answer some questions as well. And the other thing I would like to offer is that if you so choose, you are welcome to schedule a complimentary 30-minute coaching consultation with me. And we can do anything that is, I can support you in any way, shape, or form you want, whether that's something that you want to talk about something for your company, to bring me in to speak or do workshops or work with your leaders, or if it's an individual situation, I can support you with whatever is up for you right now. And certainly if there's anything about shifting your choices, I'm here for you.
I highly recommend you do any and all of those because she's very intelligent. She's incredibly engaging, and she's just a lot of fun. I mean, she and I spent an hour and a half the very first time we met, and it was like we knew each other forever. So I highly recommend you do that because she's just a pleasure to get to know. Steph, this is my favorite part of the show. if you've been listening for a little bit, this is my favorite part where I get to shut up and step back from the mic because I give you an opportunity to have an intimate moment directly with the audience, for you to say something directly to them, to give them a lasting thought for them to take with throughout their day, throughout their week, for them to hang on to. So the mic is yours.
Oh my goodness. My instinct is to read you my page and my the conclusion of my book, which is a page and a half, but it's out of reach. So I'm not going to do that. But I will say this. I will tell you one thing that's in the last, in the conclusion of the book, is this old story about a Cherokee elder and his grandson. And you may or may not know this, but even if you do, it's still, I love hearing it multiple times. But there's a story. The story goes, there was a Cherokee elder and his grandson, and the grandson said, within each one of us, there are two wolves, and they're having a fight. And one is filled with all this evil and hatred, and the other one is filled with love and light and goodness and kindness and generosity and vibrance and all these other things. And the grandson said, which one will win? Which wolf will win? And the elder said, the one you feed. So in the spirit of who's sitting at the head of the table, and you get to choose which wolf you feed within you. And there might be multiples, right? But this is something that I really do believe, that when we are connected to and committed to choosing from these higher and better parts of ourselves, that is what we are rippling out to the world. And I think especially, and the world starts with us, and then our families, and then our communities, and then our nations, and then our global community. And I really believe in that ripple that begins with our choice to consciously choose who we're being, which is ultimately fueling our actions, which is creating our results. And I invite you to really be conscious and mindful and give yourself permission to make that choice, knowing that the choice is yours.
Thank you, Stef. I think that was perfect. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for sharing your wisdom, your experience, your firewalk with all of us and with the audience. I appreciate you very much for being here.
Audra, you are a delight, and I thank you for the work you're doing and the voices that you are amplifying, including your own. And I appreciate you making this choice to do this podcast. It's awesome, and you're awesome, and your audience is awesome, and I'm excited to meet them. Thank you.
Well, I hope that they all enjoy getting to know you as I have. And I want to thank you all again for listening this week, and we'll see you again next time.
This is just the beginning.
That's our show. I am so grateful for each and every one of you and your unwavering support and your continued belief in this movement that has become much bigger than me, much bigger than just a podcast. It has become this forward momentum that we are all doing together. If you are ready, or you know somebody that is ready to tell your story and share your value with the world, please connect with me. You can reach me at audra@womeninthearena.net. I am so honored and thankful that you will share your story with me, and I'll make sure that it is well taken care of. I will never stop thanking each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next week as we share another woman's story and we celebrate her doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We'll see you next time.